I want to share with you a letter found that was sent to U.S. News and World Report several years ago. This letter obviously was in response to an article that was in that magazine. The young teen said, "The economy is shot. The family unit is in trouble. Respect for authority is a joke. For the right price, you can buy yourself a senator or a judge." Or he is out himself buying a 16-year-old to use for a couple hours. Money is worthless, and you're worthless without it. Stop worrying about why your son needs a drink before he can face this morning's classes, or why your daughter went out and got pregnant. Just help them cope with the reality of life. Before throwing us into categories, just remember that we have to run this joint in 30 years when you die off or retire or starve on your Social Security. I leave it up to you. Either give us a little help and understanding, or put the world out of its misery and send up the missiles and hope Mother Nature has better luck than the next thing that crawls up out of the slime. It's a true letter. And it's pretty sad to hear that. But it does reflect something of the fear and something of the distress, something of the chaos and confusion and disorientation and lostness of much of today's children and young people. An old Chinese proverb says, one generation plants the trees and another gets the shade. We in this generation are still living in a little bit of shade. Our grandparents, perhaps even our parents, if we're old enough, planted some trees in the past, and we are still enjoying some of the shade. But this generation has failed planting any trees for the next. The young person who wrote that letter feels no shade, no place of comfort, no place to hide, no place of security, just a fearsome reality both in the present and in the coming future. Unless we plant some trees soon, brothers and sisters, the next generation will be frightened worse than this one, and the one after that even worse. Not something that we really want to think about, but nonetheless is a reality. So how can we plant trees? How can we give shade to our children and their children and their children? That means something to some of you here that are great-grandparents. Well, the answer really is way too simple. It's just way too simple. But yet for some reason it's so difficult. The answer is teshuvah. The answer is simply teshuvah. The season that we're in is teshuvah. To return to God's standard. His word, His Torah. Now what's so frightening though, is society realizes where it's going, and to some degree realizes the chaos of its children. Certainly the children realize it, but people today more than ever are not willing to submit themselves to the boundaries God has set forth in our lives. And so they throw out the only hope for the children. You might have heard this already this morning. And these words which I command you today shall be on your heart. And you shall what? You recited that. And synagogues all over this world are saying that now, and depending on the time zone, are going to be saying it. This is God's will. Brothers and sisters, this is God's desire. This is His will regarding families. To teach Torah to your children, to teach them His instructions. That's our part. That's our part. God's part is given a little bit earlier before Devarim 6, is given in Devarim 5, verse 29. Oh, that there were such a heart in them that they would hear me and keep all my commandments, always that it might be well for them and their children forever. God longs to do that, to give them a heart for His commandments, a heart for His word. God calls them to Himself, and we must teach them. Teach them the pattern in which they should live. God is calling then for parents to teach His word. consistently. Consistently. So many of us have one foot here and one foot there, and we're not consistent. And not just New Testament or church doctrine, the whole of the Word, the complete Torah, front to back. To present His Word to the children, to raise children, to love Hashem, and to know the blessing that comes to those who will obey. In Yehoshua or Joshua 24:15, we've all heard this scripture. If it seems bad to you to serve Adonai, then choose today whom you're going to serve. Choose. Will it be the gods of your ancestors who served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amoree in whose land you are living? As for me and my household, we will serve Adonai. Done. And that is the decision we have to make as parents. Who will we serve? Will you serve the gods that are around you? Or the God of your fathers? To serve Him means that He takes the priority place in your life. He takes the priority place in your life, in your family, and you teach His truths and your precepts to your children. Yehoshua was a parent making that decision to serve the Lord. And that's the crux of the issue facing the family today. Will we serve the Lord? In July of 2011, author Lee Stanberry, he's a social conservative who has a website, it's a top 10s website. He likes to write top 10s. Just all kinds of different top 10s. That's his thing. And he wrote what he believed to be the top 10 issues facing our youth today. Number 10 in his list was single-parent households. Today, 14 million single parents are responsible for 28 million children. Single parents. Number 9, drug and alcohol abuse. And look, if you turn on the TV, these are staples in everyday media. I don't care what media you're looking at. Simply drinking and using drugs is shown as being cool. And the numbers bear proof. 21% of high school seniors say they get high. And 41, almost half of that same group report drinking alcohol. Number 8, growing up too fast. Growing up too fast. There was a time where you got to be a kid. You know? You were allowed to be a kid for a while. Today, even at the earliest ages, children are partaking in adult activities with some pretty serious consequences. And the movies and TV, the internet, essentially everywhere a kid turns, he or she is bombarded with sexual suggestions. Number 7, violence in schools. So in many instances, especially in low-income urban settings, schools at times can be war zones. And we're not talking about like bullying. No, way beyond that. Consider that in the last decade, 284 kids were murdered due to school violence. And I'm talking about shootings, stabbings, fighting, suicide. That's in school. And I know Vic, as a teacher, comes in contact with a lot of this aggressive behavior. I know it's part of his job. Number 6, materialism. We teach our children that the measure of success and happiness is what? How much you got, how much stuff you have. And kids naturally want things. We all want things. That's not necessarily a negative thing to want something, especially if your friends have it. My neighbor parks all his collector cars out front. I want one of them. I do. I admit it. If I don't lay awake at night, scheming ways to get it, that would be coveting. But unfortunately, the concept of earning what you get, remember that? Earning what you get?
You go take.
Or the idea that something you don't need has seemed to become lost today and discarded. Number 5, he said, Obesity. Obesity. Our kids are fat, and they're getting fatter. It is pitiful. Recent numbers show that 20% of American children are obese. I'm not talking chubby or husky boy. I'm talking past go on that a long time ago. I'm talking out and out obese. I've seen them. I feel so sorry for them. Video games, TV, the internet, fast food, they're all part of the problem. Kids are spending more time sitting in front of a TV and computer screen than running around outside. I didn't have any of that. Most of you didn't, a lot of you didn't, not say most, a lot of you didn't have that. So what were your options? Ride your bike, play in the woods, you run around, play ball, you did something.
And live to tell about it.
And right. Number 4, education disparity. See, a good education in comparison with a bad one will provide, as we all know, a kid with increased chance of taking advantage of opportunities to be successful in this life as far as providing for themselves. And unfortunately, though, some people have it better than others. If you live in a poor neighborhood or you are a minority, there's a good chance that the schools you attend are lacking many necessities, good quality teachers, good materials. That's a reality. Vic will tell you that again. Number 3, shifting economy. Our economy has changed in our lifetime. Those of us who are baby boomers, it's changed. Just like the one presidential candidate says, we don't make anything anymore. It's not made here anymore. It's true. It's shifting the economy to more of a service industry versus the manufacturing industry. In order to cut costs and keep prices down, companies are forced to outsource to other countries. I would say probably 2/3 of the case goods that go out of Wayside Furniture are made in Vietnam, made in China, made in, what's the other? There's Cambodia, or Cambodia, Laos, whatever it is. Yeah, Taiwan. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, Taiwan too. That's where most of the stuff is made. In the past, if you were like a high school senior, you could graduate and go to work in a local factory or maybe up in Lordstown or something, and you could make decent money. You didn't have to always go to college. Maybe you didn't want to go to college. That's fine. You could still work hard and make a good living. But these days, even if you have a college education, it's hard to find decent work anymore. 50% of college grads are not finding work. 50%. Number 2, poverty. The federal poverty level is 22,000. 22,000 for a family of 4. This equates to 21% of all children. 15 million children in the United States are in poverty. Poverty impedes learning, contributes to social behavior problems, and the number 1, what he considered number 1, is the erosion of a national identity, a national pride or identity. There is a little sense these days of a collective identity of people as being Americans living in this country. We're categorized today. We're categorized by culture, we're categorized by faith, we're categorized by lifestyle, etc. We're in categories now. And there was a time when every child would say the Pledge of Allegiance or understood the significance of the 4th of July. These practices are long gone, and so is our sense as Americans of common destiny. Top 10, according to this gentleman. For the sake of our children, brothers and sisters, we need to understand this is not an American or a political problem. It is entirely a spiritual issue. And the problem can't be fixed through legislation, through presidential candidates, through education. The only way to bring the family back to where it needs to be is to make the same decision that Yehoshua did, and that is to choose for your house that you will, above all things, and first and foremost, serve the Lord. And that means obeying His mitzvot in every aspect of your life. And this has to be our primary objective over and above our secondary demands of life. Everybody's got stuff to do. Everybody's got responsibilities. Everybody has hobbies and projects and places to go and people to go a sea of things to do. We all do. But the number one priority is knowledge and obedience of God's will and way. That's number one, and everything flows from that. It all starts by saying we choose God's way as over against the world's way in the matter of our family, really the matter of our life as a whole. You have to make that commitment and begin to follow through with it. You have to. God has always had a plan for the family, and it's very clear. But at some point, you've got to decide that that's the plan you're going to follow. And the only hope you're going to have for success is to do it wholeheartedly and completely. Our Brit Hadashah portion this morning from Ephesians, the letter to Ephesus, that Paul wrote them, he sums up what Scripture says about God's plan for the family, specifically in regards to children's responsibilities. We read that they are, verse 1, to obey their parents, and verse 2, to honor their parents. Obey, honor. Obey, honor. Okay, if you want to stay right there, that's fine, but there's a lot there to unpack. The children are called by God to be a blessing and a source of joy to the family. They aren't always, but that's what they're called to be. In our culture, and you have to admit this, which prefers having few or no children and considers couples freaks if they have many. If you have more than 2 or 3 kids, you're considered a freak. You really are. God says in Tehillim or Psalm 127 and 128 that children are a blessing from the Lord. And they are evidence of his love. They are evidence of his goodness. They belong to him. And they are here to enrich us. Sent to make our life full and to be raised by us in godliness in order that they too might be as well a witness to the true God and the gospel of his Son, Messiah Yeshua. So now, in bringing God's special gifts to maturity and to godliness and to virtue and usefulness and effectiveness for the kingdom, there are 2 things that you have to teach them as a parent. 2 things. We must teach them to obey, and we must teach them to honor. You must teach them to obey the same things that we have to learn as children of God. To obey Hashem and to honor Hashem. It's no different. The principle remains. Whether it's physical children or spiritual children, the principle remains the same. Proverbs 22:6 sums it up. What? Train up a child, what? In the way he should go, and when he is mature, what? He will not depart from it. The choice is always going to be theirs, but we have the responsibility to train them up in Hashem's way. And this is a simple general statement that if you train a child in God's ways, it'll show up in his adulthood. It'll show up somewhere. And that's the promise from Hashem. Now we know that marriages and families these days tend to be war zones, disaster areas. And the finger points at me as well as out everybody else. We've all lived it. Most of us have lived it. Homes aren't havens. There's less and less peace and joy and contentment and bliss. Rather, we have what? We got conflict. We have intimidation. We have estrangement. And a generation of people being raised today exposed rather than shaded. Exposed rather than shaded by any kind of proper God-like standard. They're just winging it. Several years ago, the Houston Police Department published a little booklet called How to Ruin Your Children. Tongue-in-cheek, they went on to say, and guaranteed to be 99% infallible. This is how you ruin your children. Number 1, begin at infancy to give the child everything they want. Give them whatever they want, whenever they want. 2, when he picks up bad words, laugh at them. Laugh at them. Think it's cute. 3, never give them any spiritual training until they're 21. And of course, let them decide for themselves what they believe or don't believe. 4, avoid using the word wrong. They may develop guilt feelings. And 5, pick up everything they leave around so they will be experienced in throwing all responsibility for their lives on somebody else. That's how you ruin your kids. A child without discipline and instruction is a potential train wreck, a potential disaster. Amen? Don't think, in saying all this, that it's just the mother's fault. Many husbands are absolutely weak and clueless. Absolutely weak and clueless. Some are absent. Some have left altogether. That's a huge, huge issue in communities of African descent. It's a huge issue. 75% of those homes are single-parent homes. Daddy's taken off. Unless you obey the standard that God has laid down, that child God has given you to be a joy and a blessing will turn out to break your heart. And many of you have struggled with children that have been heartbreakers to you. You've done everything that you could to raise them upright, and you're just not living like you want them to live. So we've seen how not to do it. How do we do it? Right? How do we do it right? Well, as we learned from Ephesians, children are called to obey and honor. And they need, well, obey is what? Obey is the action, and honor is the attitude. Obey is the action, to honor is the spirit, the attitude of the heart. They need to learn attitudinally to honor their parents, and in terms of action, to obey something that does not come naturally, parents. It's not natural. You see, children are deficient in 4 areas. They're deficient in 4 areas. You can read from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, 52, and Yeshua kept increasing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. We're talking about a young Yeshua here. A young Yeshua, okay? He was increasing where? In wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Yeshua, as a child, grew in 4 areas. Wisdom. He grew in stature. It means he grew mentally and physically. And also in favor with God and man, it means he grew spiritually and he grew socially. He developed people skills. I'm so glad I had the people skills I had when I was 16. Let me tell you, it's a good thing. It was a little bumpy for me to get to this point. Really bumpy. Thank goodness I had a good German mom. Bless her heart. She worked awfully hard. Spiritually and socially. Those are the 4 categories in which children are deficient. They are mentally deficient, okay? They're children. They're mentally deficient. What that means is they have limited knowledge and limited wisdom. And some act a little more mature than others, but the bottom line is they're still kids. They don't know as much as they think they do. I get so sick and tired of these little cocky brats on TV, like smarting off their parents, like they know more than their parents. It happens all the time in TV shows. The kids are smarter than mom and dad. And they promote that on TV, and the kids watch those shows, and they get this idea that they know better than their parents. Not only are they mentally deficient, they are physically deficient. They have limited strength. Limited strength. Third, they are socially deficient. It means that they are selfish, and they are proud, and they want what they want when they want it, and they show off a lot. That's socially deficient. And finally, they are spiritually deficient in that they are sinful and they do not know God personally. Oh, my little angel is not sinful. Oh, yes, your little angel is very sinful. They're selfish. For them to obey their parents and to honor them, children have to be taught to do this. They must be disciplined to do this. They must be made to obey. They must be made to respect. It just doesn't happen. I watched the parenting here, and you somehow think it's just going to happen by osmosis. It doesn't. It takes active participation and involvement on your part. Parents, then, you've got to create an environment and a context which demands that they develop in these areas. Mentally, you want to stimulate them to know the truth of God. Physically, you want to nourish them so they can, grow up strong. You got to feed them the right foods. They got to eat right. Socially, you want to teach them humility, love of others, how to act appropriately in public. And finally, spiritually, we want to confront their sin and bring them to a place of repentance and faith in Yeshua. That's what parenting is. It's active. It's teaching them about God and His instructions. It's teaching them Torah. You're teaching them Torah. I've said this many times. A young Jewish boy or girl, what's the very first book in the Bible that a parent would teach them out of? Which one do you think it is? Leviticus. It's called the priestly manual. They would always go to Leviticus first because it teaches you appropriate behavior. Appropriate behavior. Now, it's so critical that we're active in teaching the Torah and then enforcing their obedience to God's desire by doing something that is rarely done today. Disciplining them. Disciplining them. Disciplining them when they disobey. Now, admittedly, teaching children to obey and honor their parents, it's not easy. It's not simple. But there are some basic reasons why it's a struggle. And I'll tell you why. One, they enter the world all cute and cuddly, like the little penguins, cute and cuddly. Right? Cute and cuddly, but quickly discover that they are little monsters. They're selfish. They're self-centered, rebellious, screaming, crying until they get what they want. I watch how many of you deal with your screaming, crying babies. Once they get a little beyond that very infant stage, they're great at disobedience. Continually, I hear you say, no. They're good at disobedience. You don't have to teach them how to disobey, do you? Did you, as parents, have to teach your children how to disobey? Right? Isn't that funny? You didn't have to teach them that. Where'd they learn that? Maybe. Nobody's ever had to teach a child how to disobey. Nobody's ever had a child that went to at some point and say, now I just want to show you what disobedience is. I want to show you, son and daughter, what that is all about. It comes natural. They're utterly selfish. They're utterly self-consumed. They want what they want when they want it. They don't want to wait for anything. They're utterly impatient. They have no regard for anything that you're concerned about. The whole world, according to a child, revolves around them. And so many of you allow it. You allow it. And so they have to be taught to obey through very painful lessons. And they even rebel against that to varying degrees, don't they? They fight through. Another reason is it is a struggle to get children to honor and obey is because the world system is against you. The world system is against whatever your efforts are. The world continually keeps the pressure on. That's why Romans 12:2 says, don't be conformed to this world. Don't let your children be conformed to the world. I don't care what the rest of the world's doing. I don't care. Consumptive materialism teaches them self-indulgence, and that's a terrible thing to learn. In America alone, we spend more money on toys. We spend more money on toys than the gross national product of 60 nations. Is that like an awakening at all? We pay more for toys than the gross national product of 60 nations? Are you kidding me? And all they want is just a box. Give a box. Indulging our children. They're sold a steady diet of self-centeredness. Did you know that kids aged from 2 to 11, they view an average of 25,600 commercials a year? Kids age 11 Recent studies showed spent 1.5 hours a day on the computer, and in a 1-year period viewed 3 billion, did I say million? No, I said billion. They view 3 billion display ads for food and beverages. Any thought as why they're obese? The goal for advertisers is to make them discontent. To make them discontent, or to learn the general discontent of not liking what you have and having the desire for something that you see on television. Society teaches them to rebel against authority. It teaches them that the most important thing in their life is self-esteem and self-fulfillment and getting their own will and their own way when they want it and how they want it. Self, 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 self. Kids watch an average of 30 hours of television a week while they're growing up until graduation from high school. And that's not even factoring in the video games. This is more than any other activity in their life except for what? Sleeping. Sleeping. They're overexposed to everything on the tube. Children see more sin in a month than their grandparents probably saw in their entire lifetime. And all that media is pumping out an anti-God lifestyle. Everybody now has a gay friend. It's perfectly normal to have a sodomite couple raising a child. They're normative now. In fact, sometimes they're better than the normal people, the godly people. They're the really nice ones. They're the really wise ones. Is it any wonder that 10 million, I said children, have some sort of sexual disease? And 5,000 more contract every day. Is it any surprise that 1 in 5 children use drugs twice a week? That's from 13 up. Twice a week. Now the third area of debilitating destruction aimed at children is not only which comes from them, within them, and from around them, but what comes upon them. So in 2 Timothy chapter 3, we read about the difficulty of the last days. You've all read, what Paul wrote to Timothy about the last days. And he even speaks about children. He says children will be self-loving, money-loving, proud, arrogant, insulting, disobedient to parents. Does that sound like kids today? And you're largely responsible, right? You are. You become buddies to your children rather than parents or adults. I quoted a fact in a message years ago, the fact that one of the breakdowns in society today is a result there's no more adults. There's no more grown-ups. You don't have grown-ups anymore. You used to have grown-ups and adults. I still feel that. I'm 61 years old, and there are people in my life I still look at like my seniors, like my adults. I can't get over that. It's so much a part of my life. I mean, I'm raising a family, I own a house, jobs, I got a career. I still look at certain people in my life as Mr. and Mrs., like I'm 11 or 12 years old. It's there. It's not going anywhere. It's crazy. One of the characteristics of the last day is a defiance towards parents. It's a society, not only that defiance will happen, but a society that tolerates it. Tolerates it. It's a society that not only tolerates it, it teaches it. We are a society teaching them to rebel against authority. It's a society that wants to pass out condoms and require that no parent have the right to know, so they can't push off on a child their own religious convictions. You should let the child. You know how many parents have heard say, well, I'm not really sure what my child believes. Really? Well, why don't you teach them something? Because it's your obligation to train them up in the ways of the Lord. If they want to choose differently when they're out of the house, that's fine. But you've got to impress upon them a biblical standard. It doesn't matter whether they choose it or not. What choices are they making before they're 18? The society today wants to strip parents of their authority to prevent their young daughters from freely murdering their babies that they conceive at ages 12 to 16. Don't tell mommy, daddy, you go ahead and murder that baby. That's law today. We need to really just kind of talk about these things. So when Brother David is talking about voting, some of you think, well, we're not in the world, we're not of the world. We're in the world, we're not of the world. Yeah, you're still in this nation. You still have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to honor the authority of the land. You have the responsibility of rendering to Caesar what's Caesar's. You do have an obligation to the country or the place that you're living. You still have obligations to do that. You still have an obligation to be salt and light in your communities and to your governments and your nation. You have that obligation. And part of that can be expressed in your voting against issues like abortion and the murder of unborn children. Rebellious and undisciplined, selfish, sexually stimulated, angry, bitter, frustrated, destructive children, they're a product of a society that is disobedient to its parents, largely because they don't have that normal love of family anymore. It's gone. We've redefined family. We have an abused and unloved generation of children. And children are seen by many as a burden anymore, so that 1/3 of those that are at childbearing age right now, they've got sterilized. Women and men, 1/3. 30 people that are childbearing age right now have got themselves sterilized, so they don't have to have them. They have their own life. Fathers have forsaken their love for children, with 60+ million children without fathers in the home. 60 million. Mothers have gone in self-indulgent pursuit of their career or whatever it is they want. There are millions of latchkey kids who are sitting behind locked doors, shades pulled, overexposed to video games, TV, internet. You wonder how many sit in daycare all day long in two-parent homes wanting more and more and more. No doubt divorce, that's a no-brainer, is devastated the family and children are its casualties. 1960, this is a really eye-opening stat. What do you think the percent of children under 18 experiencing divorce in 1960? What do you think the percent was? 1960. 1. 1960, 1% of children 18 and under experienced divorce. 1%. 1. That was 5. You know what it is now? 54. 54. I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, all is well when the family's healthy. When it's not, there's no hope for this society as you know it. There's no hope. The only hope then to shape the generation to come is to submit ourselves to what the Word of God teaches about the family and about raising children. Frankly, folks, it's not that difficult to figure it out. It really isn't. Teach your children to obey you and to respect you. Easy enough, and that's the sum of it all. We have this thing, for example. Ariel, will you go do this for me? Yeah. What? What? Yes. What? Yes, sir. Thank you. See the difference? Before, his attitude is one of being put off by my telling him to do anything. That little exercise right there is teaching him to honor and obey. Yes, sir. Thank you. Fine. And those kids, I don't know if I could love them more, but one of the ways that I love my children is to be sure that they learn proper obedience and honor. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment, with promise that it may be well with you and that you may live long on the earth. These are the only verses in the Bible that command children. The only verses that are a command to children. And there will be times when they fight against it more aggressively than other times. And those are the battle times when you have to consistently force the issue of their obedience and make the consequence severe enough so that they get the message. Has Hashem ever disciplined you guys? You ever got that Holy Spirit spanking? Of course you have. Did he get your attention? Hallelujah. Remember Kevin Bookman? We had a guy in the congregation, he had like 12 kids, 10, I can't remember. He used to come up to me and go, yeah, got that Holy Spirit 2x4 in the back of my head the other day. Holy Spirit 2x4. Yeah, got my attention. It cracks me up to this day when he says that. Oh. In Proverbs, I don't need to tell most of you because you're students of the Word. If you look at Proverbs 1, Proverbs 2, Proverbs 3, Proverbs 4, Proverbs 5, you know how they all begin? Let me read them for you. Proverbs 1, my son, heed the discipline of your father, and do not abandon the teaching of your mother. They will be a garland to grace your head, a medal of honor for your neck. You know what that means? It means that they make you a beautiful person. It makes you a gracious person. They will bless you. Listen to what your father and your mother teach you. How about Proverbs 2? My son, if you will receive my words and store my commands inside you, paying attention to wisdom, inclining your mind towards understanding. Proverbs 3. My son, don't forget my teaching. Keep my commands in your heart, for they will add to you many days, years of life and peace. Do not let grace and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. In other words, listen to what I tell you and live it out in every area of your life. Let's go to Proverbs 4. Listen, children, to a father's instruction. Pay attention in order to gain insight, for I am giving you good advice. So don't abandon my teaching. For I too was once a child to my father, and my mother too. Thought of me as her special darling. He too taught me. He said to me, let your heart treasure my words. Keep my commands and live. Thank you, Shamash. Listen, my son, receive what I say. The years of your life will be many. Chapter 5. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding. Do I need to go on?
Sure.
I can. You're all there. But woven throughout the wisdom of Proverbs and the passion of wisdom is a direct teaching to the children. That wisdom is every bit about obeying and honoring your parents. Now, how do you do this process? How do you bring a child to obedience and respect? Well, go back to Proverbs again. Proverbs 3:11 through 12. My son, do not reject the discipline of the Lord, or loathe his reproof. For whom the Lord loves, he reproves, even as the father, the son in whom he delights. And this is quoted in Messianic Jews, or Hebrews 12, verses 5 through 11, where it talks about chastening. The category here is what? It's of discipline. It's of discipline. One of the guys in the military will appreciate this. The guy I worked with was in Marines in Vietnam. You know, I remember my drill sergeant. I think I said this to us before, but I remember my drill sergeant saying, "Men, take a moment here to pray and give your souls to your Maker, because from this point on, your butts are mine." That's. He said it a little more graphically, but the point of that is that he was teaching them discipline. So the process of teaching and obedience is the process of discipline. Discipline can simply be defined in these terms. Discipline is that function by which parents reward obedience and punish disobedience. Pretty simple. Reward obedience, punish disobedience. Reward obedience, punish disobedience. There you go. Parenting 101. and my ad consistently.
Politically incorrect.
Well, you picked the right rabbi. You're not going to find none of that here. It's like years ago when I used to actually eat meat. I'd go in the hamburger station the first time, and that's when he was alive. I walked up to the car and said, "You got any ketchup?" He goes, "Oh, don't find none of that here. Won't find none of that here. Only mustard and pickles. No ketchup. You won't go find any of that here. No political correctness." Non-conformity to this divine standard results in negative consequences. Conformity to the divine standard results in positive consequences. And these are principles that we have to teach our children because they don't learn it at home. They're going to find out in this big world that the consequences, the same principles will apply there. Positive, negative consequences. But the consequences are huge when you leave the house. They're huge. And sometimes unfixable. Rabbi, do you believe in a positive reward? I do. Do you believe in a negative reward? I do. So you say, should you try to motivate your children to a positive reward? Yes. Yes. Reward them. Doesn't God motivate us with that? Doesn't He promise good to us? Doesn't He promise blessing? Didn't He say that the child who obeys will live long on the earth? If you do these things, you'll be blessed. If you do these things, you'll be cursed. Isn't that what the word says? In fact, if you look at Ephesians 6, it's all positive motivation. There isn't a threat there. It's good to say to your child, if you do this, I'll reward you. I'll reward you in this way, knowing that the child deserves that reward. Discipline involves both. Discipline is very simple. It is giving the appropriate